Theme this morning, we'll get to in a second. I'll just tell you about a conversation that takes place in our house. It goes like this. Oh no, I've lost my, and then fill in a blank. And then I reply to Candace, no, you haven't lost it. You've just misplaced it. And then I get a look that tells me, oh, that was the wrong thing to say. And I get that real quick and say, okay, let's look for it so that it's no longer lost. And she normally will say, but it's lost to me. Yeah, maybe misplaced, but it's lost to me. Candace, we're gonna find it. You haven't left the house. It's gotta be here somewhere. The counter for Candace, I'll take her side of this argument for a moment. Her counter should always be, and can always be, my mother. My mother told us that she lost some jewelry, a lot of jewelry. She had a little velvet bag of jewelry that she lost. I'm certain, I don't remember, but I'm certain I said to her, well, it's not lost. You might have just misplaced it. And I think Candace learned the look from my mom, because I know I would have gotten it from my mom. As it turned out, she never found it. Now, I don't know if it was in the house or not. Unfortunately for all of us, my mom developed dementia. So I don't know if it was a sign of before she was diagnosed. I don't know, but she never recovered that jewelry. I don't know if she had workers in the house that found what was misplaced and claimed. I don't know any of those answers, but it certainly is a counter for Candace to say, yeah, it's misplaced, but to me, it's lost. Our theme this morning is, what is lost? And I'm not asking the item. That's not what that question means. I'm asking, what does it even mean? What is lost? What does it mean to be lost? What is lost? Marissa may not know this unless she's heard me talk about it way too many times. But we met long before we met. I met her as an infant. And I remember as a young minister going with enthusiasm. I had heard how sick she was. And I talked to Shannon after the service. I said, I'd like to go to anoint her. I want to say she was at Ford. Was she at Ford at the time?
She was at Children's.
Okay, in Detroit. I didn't know where Ford was. I didn't know where Children's was. So it didn't matter if I remember it or not. But I remember getting directions and going to the hospital. I remember just thinking, I just want to get back there and anoint this baby. I remember going up to her room. I remember going into the room. I remember being alone. They weren't allowing a lot of people to go back there. I don't know if any, I don't know. But I was able to get back there. And I remember that you had to reach into I don't know if they call it an incubator, but you had to reach in with their gloves and you couldn't touch. And I remember feeling lost. All kinds of enthusiasm, all kinds of desire got me to that place. And then I had to face the reality of this situation. And I felt lost. I had no support. I had no one around me. I had no one to say, go ahead. I just had that moment, just you and I, Marissa. And it was glorious. But I want you to know, my faith said all will be well. My brain said, but look, but just look. How is this going to reverse out? How? And I was lost. I don't know what lost is. Okay, I at least by this statement, I don't know all the facets of lost. The theme for Camp Out was never lost. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what the scripture was. I don't know the inspiration behind that, but I am intrigued by that theme, never lost. Is lost a state of mind? Is it literally a situation? Is it a perspective? Candace sees it as lost. I see it as misplaced. Is it lost? It isn't to me, it is to her. What is lost? And if you ask that question, then you have to ask this question: what is found? Every time we look for something in the house, every time I pray. And I try to use my insider card. My insider card is, Lord, I know you can see it. I can't. Candace can't. I know you see where it is. Just let us find it. When we were at the beach, when Candace and I we were just dating at the time. We were at the beach down in Palm Beach, and her brother was visiting at the same time. And he lost his watch at the beach. Kind of challenging when you consider 500 miles of beach in Florida. So finding a watch in the sand that fell off a tower or fell somewhere is a silly endeavor. And so I came back out of the water, and Candace said, we're looking for Ryan's watch. He lost it. And I asked, because my mom was Letty Obradovich, who was the only person in the house who had any connection to God for the majority of her early walk. She said, did you pray? And Candace said, no. I said, let's just stop. And so we literally, in a circle around this towel, we grabbed hands. Do you remember this, Cam? I remember it so well. I don't even know which beach we were at. We grabbed hands around this towel and we prayed. And I think because it was my request and I was the only one that probably was deemed like, do you do this in public? Do you do this at the beach? Do you do this looking for a watch? When I said, have you prayed? All eyes went to me. Well, go ahead then, you pray. I don't think it's going to work, so you pray. And as I said, at the end of the prayer, in Jesus' name, I turned and my foot hit something in the sand. What is lost? Is it permanent? Is it temporary? Is it accurate? Is it the right description of the condition? Think about Candace when she asked that question and me sending back. She's introduced me to a phrase over the last year. It's called talk, and it's so appropriate to introduce it to me. It's called toxic positivity. And what it means is, I don't need to hear your pep talk right now. I just need to find my library card. Wow, we're looking for her library card, if that's what's lost. And it's under some socks, folded socks in the corner of the living room. God sees that, we don't. While we're looking for the watch, it's right by my foot in the sand. We don't see it, God does. What is lost? While we're looking for my mom's jewelry, we never find it. But did God see it? What happened to that jewelry? I think of this all the time. That house that I grew up in, by the way, was stood certainly as long as my parents owned it, which was probably 40-something years. My mom was in a bit of financial straits and needed to sell the house. It was too big for her. Literally, I think 16-room, 2-story house that we grew up in, and she was one person at this point in her life. So she had to sell the house for a lot of reasons, and plus it had gained some value, so she was going to be able to do well, at least to retire. So she sold it. And 2 months later, a hurricane came through, which had come through for the 40 years they owned it, and the roof tore off and it was destroyed. 2 months after she sold this home. I often think, when they leveled this home, was that velvet bag in the house? Or was it in a box in the bottom of her closet under sweaters that she later picked up and took to Goodwill? And someone opened that box, maybe one of the workers, to start to put the sweaters out, and they found this velvet bag. And they opened it up, and it was jewelry. And this person, this is my scenario, and this person's child was sickly, and they didn't have the money to help this child, and they pawned that jewelry. and paid for those expenses, and that child lives on because my mom lost that jewelry. What is lost? What is found? Never lost is quite a bold theme. Is it a statement of faith? Is it a statement of courage? Is it a statement of tenacity? Is it toxic positivity? Never lost. Have you ever lost something? Not jewelry. Okay, not jewelry. Not a library card. Have you ever lost something so significant that you yourself become lost? I want you to think about what is lost and what is found. Luke, the 15th chapter. I think lost is a perspective, by the way. I think it's certainly literal, but I think lost is also a perspective. We can be lost when we're found. We can be lost when everything around us seems okay. And we can just be lost. Jesus Christ begins this story once upon a time. He doesn't begin it that way, I do. Once upon a time, there was a man. And this man had two sons. Both of them good boys. One of them a little too itchy to get out of the house. The older son seemed to be compliant. Let me look at my daughter. The older son, the older child seemed to be compliant, like older children always are. But Dad, it doesn't make sense. Your tie's a little crooked. And then my middle child says, Dad, it looks so much better when it's off to the side. So the oldest child was compliant, did everything he was supposed to do. The second son wanted to live, wanted to get out of the house, wanted to get out there and experience. So he said to his father, divide up our inheritance. And if you would, give that to me now. I don't want to wait. I want to live that money today. I want to live. I want to go explore. I want to experience life. And feeding sheep just isn't doing it for me. I'm not just taking the these and thous out of this story. I've completely modernized it, but I hope you're following the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son. And so the youngest son, the father cashes out and gives him a sum of money, and the younger son goes out to live. And I'm going to get to some of these verses. I'm going to put the these and thous back in just a second. But I want you to capture this story so you understand kind of in real life what's happening here. This is not a bizarre story. This is not a strange event. This is life. I see this happen in Oldham County. Kids grow up in this safe, beautiful environment. And they graduate high school. There's just dust. They're gone. They've taken off. I'm going to the big city. And they go and they move and they get an apartment in maybe Lexington where they went to college, maybe Louisville where they went to college, but they're out of here. And like the younger son, you're going to find maybe when they run out of money or run out of bad experiences or mistakes, they come back home to the safety of Oldham County. Every little city has this story, right? Every town has it. We know the story. He took an accounting. The son took an accounting of himself. And he was out of money and he had this new job. And in his job, he was feeding pigs at a farm. And while he was feeding them, and I hope everyone's okay with this description. While he was feeding them slop, he started to think, if I could just have some of that to eat. I'm so hungry. I have no money. I'll eat this mess. Look where my life has gone. He was so lost. I don't know the time. Jesus does not tell a time span at all in this story. I don't know what the time span was. I don't know how long it took him to get to this condition, but 6 months before, 1 year before, whatever that time period was, he was fine. Life was good. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't fulfilling to him, obviously, but he was safely cared for. Not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there he wasted his substance, is the way it's recorded. I've given you 3 paragraphs when it's just a sentence. And when he had spent all, there arose a famine in the land, and he began to be in want. He went and joined himself to a citizen who sent him in the fields to feed the swine. 1 sentence, 3 paragraphs in line. He would have fain have filled his belly. He was so hungry, he would have filled his belly with the husks. It says that he's feeding the pigs. I will arise, and here comes a different perspective. Here comes the broken spirited perspective. Here comes the humility, compelled humility. I will arise and go to my father and will say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me one of thy hired servants. I will go back and work as a servant to my father. Anything to go back to the safety of my family. Lost. I remember the first time I felt, and I can't even say the first time. I can remember a time when I felt significantly lost. But I also remember a childhood of situations where I often felt lost. When those around me would have said I was completely found. And my life is not different than anyone else's. I don't claim to have it better. I don't claim to have it worse. Just a little different by way of specifics, but no different than anyone. We've all felt this experience where everything appears to be okay, and yet we feel so lost. What is lost? He arose and came to his father, but when he was yet way off, a great way off, in fact, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. I know you've heard this story, but I want you to hear it from the perspective of your being lost. I want you to be the son returning this morning. I had glorious, not enough, but glorious time to talk to Mike Netter. Before he had an incredible experience in his life. Then I heard from Sister Lisa about the incredible experience. And then I had time afterwards to talk to Mike about this experience, about where he was, about where he had been. Lost. What is lost? Is it a minister puffing his chest up, thinking, if I can just get to the hospital and anoint this baby, everything will be well? And then you're confronted with a situation, your knees buckle. Lost. What is lost? It can happen anywhere and happens everywhere. As I look at each of you, I'm picturing scenarios, none of which are accurate, all of which are real in my mind. But I wonder what lost means to each of you. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight. I'm no more worthy to be called thy son. And its next sentence starts, but the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. Bring hither the fatted calf, kill it, let us eat and be merry. You know this story. I want you to see it differently. I want you to see it from a different angle. I want you to be that son. What must that feel like? What did it feel like 3 steps back? Coming around the corner, having the courage to come around that corner and walk towards the house, see the house. What am I going to say to my dad? Sweaty palms, shaky legs. Do I turn around and go back? Do I just disappear forever? Look at what have I done with my life? And then to come around the corner and be greeted like this. What has happened? For my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. They began to be merry. The house exploded. Junior's home. Kill the fatted calf, get the feast ready. We are going to celebrate this homecoming. All of them? Hold that question. Now the elder son was in the field, and as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. Be him now. Okay, I got you to be the prodigal son. Now be the son who had stayed home, had done everything right, had fixed his tie, had taken care of his father, had done everything right. He hears music and dancing. What could this be? Maybe it's for me. Maybe they're finally celebrating the work I've done. Oh, I'm getting to the house. He called one of the servants and asked, what does this mean? And he said unto him, thy brother is come, thy father has killed the fatted calf because he received him safe and sound. Speaking of the oldest son, he was angry. Now, where was the oldest son over this last 6 months or a year or 2 years, whatever the time period is? Where was he mentally? Maybe he's resentful that he left. I got stuck with all the work. He left, he walked out. I'm the only one left here. Maybe he was as lost as his brother was, but looked so found. Showing up for work every day, doing what he was supposed to do every day. All appears good. Maybe he was lost. And would not go in. By the way, I don't remember reading that before. I've read the prodigal son so many times. I don't remember reading that he pouted. He was angry and thou hast pouted, is what this is saying. He wouldn't go in. I'm not going in there and dancing. I'm not going in for the music. That's my music playing. They should be dancing to me. I'm the steady one. I'm the one doing all the work. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. He answering said to his father, lo, these many years I do serve thee. Neither transgressed I at any time. I'm the one who's been here. And yet thou never gavest me a kid. This is so great, isn't it? I never got a cat. No one ever celebrated me. But as soon as thy son was come, which has devoured thy living with harlots, which has taken all the money that you gave him and spent it on silliness, on self. You've killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is yours. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. What is lost? Lost is a literal event. Lost is a perspective. Lost is a condition. Lost is a situation. Lost is a loneliness. And for me, there are few things as lonely as being lost when you're surrounded with people. Eva, we celebrate your condition today. Today, we would say you've been found. And you would say, I was here all this time. But you're in a new condition. Found. I don't know how your dad got to where your dad got to, but he is found today. Lisa, I don't know. I don't know how to capture your life and your walk and all that you've been through. I don't even know that endured is the right word. I don't even know that that's a good word to use. I guess lost is in there somewhere. At different stages, at different times, for different reasons. And so I glory in the condition of your family today. But I don't believe for one moment that there's just one in this room who's been lost. I don't believe for one moment that this message falls on deaf ears. I don't believe for one moment that those who are on Zoom don't understand lost and don't have as many definitions for this condition, situation, perspective as I have today. I would rather be the older son for much of the times that this story captures. But there is certainly a moment I would rather be the prodigal son coming home and feeling the welcoming of the Father. Today I am the older son. Today I am the prodigal son. Today I am the father. I've served probably in all these roles as each of you have. So this story rings true to all of us. I want you to trust this statement. You are never lost. You may feel it, and it may be real. I am not demeaning nor diminishing the pain of feeling lost, but I'm telling you from the perspective of God, you are never lost. He sees you, he understands, and even understands the ache that may bring you to that place. But there's music and there's dancing awaiting all of us. When we fall into this new and better condition of being found. My prayer for each of you is that you feel the joy of being found. And if found doesn't land in your heart, then I'll say it this way: the joy of not being lost. I pray that joy for each one of you. I don't know where each of you are. I don't know where each of our followers online are. But I would ask you to consider yourself like that item that Candace and I discussed in our home. Misplaced, maybe. Lost, feels like it. But never, never outside the view of our God. So consider yourself this. You are found. May the Lord bless each one of you.